Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Well, hello, listeners, and welcome to podcast 147. We are only 3 podcasts away till podcast 150, and it is now April. Can you believe it? I am getting ready to head out to FIBO in the next day. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the European Health and Fitness Forum and also at the World Active Forum, where I'll be on stage on Friday with some distinguished panelists talking about digitization of fitness. Please hit me up if you're out there. I'd love to see all my friends. I hope to say hello in person. Always wonderful events. So please, let's connect if you're there and I'm there. I'd look forward to it. And today we are going to share the audio of the recent webinar. I will also include the deck for you to see it in the links. So be on the lookout for that. If not at this show, look at my LinkedIn feed or Twitter feed. They may have it there. But this, we're going to discuss and explore AI and user experience with Ian from Shosabi. We had a great reception from our first webinar on AI with some of the examples that Shosabi, which is Mitsubishi's group, is working on with respect to personal training. I think you might find this of great interest. We had a lot of attendees from around the world on it. So I hope you enjoy it and looking forward to seeing everyone, as I mentioned before, in Germany here in the next few days. So without further ado, let's welcome Ian on to the podcast.
So our agenda for today, of course, is to introduce our guest, Ian, so that you understand a little bit about his background. And then I'm going to explore an overview of UX today, user experience today, how important that is and what's going on in the world of user experience. And we're going to touch a little bit on how AI can impact user experience. And with that, we're going to talk about a number of things, then kind of discuss in a little more specifics what Ian's been working on with Shosabi to kind of give you a more tangible example of UX using AI, and then finally Q&A. So again, let's get started. Ian, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Cool. Well, firstly, thank you for everyone for attending. My name is English. I've got an English father, but I'm born and raised in Norway. My journey into fitness started when I was 17. I started working as a massage therapist, and from there on, I kind of went into manual therapy. I did my doctor's degree in Stockholm on manual therapy. It's called naprapathy. I've been working also within fitness and teaching fitness educations for the past 14 years, specializing a lot within biomechanics and program design. I've run a clinic in Dubai for a physiotherapy and personal training studio in Dubai for 9 years. And now I'm back in Norway, but been working with Shosabi for the past almost 2 years, really trying to explore the possibilities with the emerging technologies today and how we can serve the public better. So yeah, I've been part of multiple little fit tech startups, my own and with others as well. I have this urge to create. So I'm super happy where I am and excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us, Ian. We look forward to hearing your views. And I know many of you will be at FIBO, at the World Active Forum event and the European Health and Fitness Forum event. I will be there as well. So please say hello if you're around or come see me on stage Friday. Ian, I know you guys, and you are going to be at FIBO as well at Hall 7, booth E86, right?
That's right. Yeah, we are just coming off Ursa, but we still have a new version of our software that we are excited to present and share. And we're super happy from the feedback that we got at Ursa. Tons of attention and lots of great conversations came out of that. So hopefully we can continue at FIBO and look forward to see people there.
Yeah, and there'll be a number of different vendors demonstrating AI there, but it'll be a very cool show. So without further ado, let's dive into our first kind of subject, which is an overview of user experience today. User experience is becoming much more important for a lot of reasons we'll touch on. It's a widely used term. We'll talk about what it actually means. But basically, it is the emotion that is evoked as a result of every aspect of a member or user's interaction with a product or company that contributes to overall perception and satisfaction. So it is a broad swath of items, but it is a real differentiator in business today. This was identified by a number of people in the recent past. If you tweet me, tag me on any of the platforms at Bryan K. O'Rourke, I'll get you this book. Also, look at this link. This book was originally released by Joseph Pine in 1998, which is a while ago, 25 years ago. But he did a podcast that's on that link down there, that bit.ly link, more recently that readdresses the experience economy and how brands really make a difference by focusing on their UX. So I'd really recommend you check it out. And a lot of us are experiencing user experience driven by AI today, whether we realize it or not. So when you get on Netflix, for example, how the content's being served up to you that you'd like, things you want to watch, that's all relying on data from people that are similar than you, knowing your interests, etc. We know that Uber and Lyft use AI for user experience. So based on the weather, traffic, time of day, events, dynamic pricing, their pricing moves up or down to get more or less users of their platform depending on these variables, and they do it intelligently. That's another example of creating great user experience. Of course, you've probably heard of Echo Look from Amazon, where it knows what you're buying for fashion. It can actually suggest things. You can try them on, see what they look like, all being driven by user experience being driven by AI today. And in our space, we have, of course, Shosabi and a number of other companies. One we like to talk about is Hyperhuman. It's a great example of a tool that takes existing video content you might have, uses an AI to then create other forms of content automatically, a very cool product. And user experience is so important in making a very different and impactful user experience as a business strategy. It is core to what I've identified as the money principles in competition. Sorry, I went too fast. And these are the four pillars. And of course, number two, outside of the way we think about things, is user experience. And then the fourth one being execution engines, the things that actually enable us to, in fact, execute user experience. And that's where, we're going to touch on how AI is a very big component of that dynamic today. Another thing to realize about user experience is what I described before as interaction. And people use prototypes and schematics with different user profiles and scenarios to try to dial into what they're trying to create through their UX. But also the interface itself is different, but it is a key driver. So depending on the tools, so for example, you couldn't really do a user experience like Netflix in a regular movie theater because the user interface wouldn't be adept to delivering that. So these things can work very much hand in glove. And this is where technology becomes a game changer in changing the way people have those experiences. But within user experience itself, here are the four interconnected keys that I've been talking about for the last 5 years on UX in our space. And many of you are probably familiar with some of them. Number one is personalization. the key word now being hyper-personal. That's very much an experience tailored to an individual. Another thing, for example, is frictionless. It's got to be easy, quick, and light. Strategic. So we want it to be the kind of thing people really want to have, they're interested in. And then finally, of course, omni-channel, in the club, outside of the club. And then you have to ask the questions, like with frictionless user experience and creating a coordinated UX, you have to ask yourself these questions, what are you delivering actually and why? And when are you delivering it and why? And where are you delivering it and why? These being key questions that people, need to apply. And I think you, Ian, would agree when you look at books like Leading Digital, Capgemini, and the research they've done, that when it comes to user experience, as they term it, customer experience here, adopting smart technology is a major differentiator. And this group found this to be the case. They documented it amongst competitors. So if you're able to actually deploy these digital solutions that change UX, you're going to probably gain a pretty significant competitive advantage. What do you think about that, Ian?
For sure. I mean, the example of just what Peloton did to spinning bikes, obviously, or spinning classes, is a good example of how they provided a unique both hardware but also user experience through their interface. And I must admit that I was only just recently exposed to my first Peloton class when I was in Ursa, because they don't have it here in Norway. Yeah, I mean, I think just now, obviously, we all have very high expectations when it comes to interfaces. We expect our apps, our software to work immediately, to be intuitive, to be quick, and the least amount of touch points. And I think you have to set high standards for yourself when you're bringing on technology to help enhance the user experience. Because if you miss on that, it could worsen your experience and just create pain points and friction if your software or apps aren't working or your technology isn't working. So for sure, it's important, but you need to do it well.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we come to the impact of AI on UX. We showed you some examples of this, like Netflix, like Amazon and others. In our last webinar where we talked about this subject, of course, for those of you that attended, if you weren't able to, go to the Fitness Industry Technology Council podcast or our YouTube channel, and you can listen to it. But as we discussed, the key components of AI are these components right here. And as we'll talk about in a minute, computer vision being one of those that Shosabi relies on a camera. So that's one example of these kind of drivers, these engine components that contribute to AI solutions. And we also talked about how you have to think about AI as a tool in driving aspects of UX. So, for example, as this says, an automator, automating process, or this other one, a recommender. All right, so you're going to see aspects of this in, for example, Shosabi's UX is driven by AI, where the product actually does these things. So they're using AI as a tool. And you have to think about your relationship with AI in this way to imagine what the potential is when we talk about creating these 4 interconnected keys to excellent UX. So as we've gone through this kind of quick overview, Ian, I'd like you to touch on some of the highlights, regarding Shosabi and how it relates to what we were just kind of describing. So please take it away here. I know you're going to be at booth E86, so if people want to come see it, they can, right?
Yeah, and I must say, this is a pretty unique product and a unique user experience. So if you have the opportunity to experience it, it does create a bit of a wow factor the first time you're exposed to the camera vision and with this point cloud that we have that represents you from a different perspective. I mean, in this picture you have here, you can see the lady on the right, she's facing the camera, but we're actually prescribing her on the side view because that gives more information on her movement technique. But yeah, ultimately, what we do is that we use a 3D camera vision with AI technology to track the biomechanics of movement with very high precision. The team in Japan and Mitsubishi have been working on this for 5 years before I came on board, and they've been working on really maximizing the potential of 3D camera technology so that we can objectively and in real time measure things like range of motion, the stability of joints, the sequencing of joint motions, the speed that joints move at, the distances they travel, etc., through all major joints of the body, all at the same time, and it allows us to give this real-time feedback to help the user improve their form, or to assess the user to see what capabilities they have, and also obviously improve movement standards over time. And once we view enough of those movements, we can start to estimate certain levels of discrepancies or imbalances that we can then use for predictions and prescriptions.
So tell us, when you say an AI personal trainer, this really isn't replacing a personal trainer. It's really, what is it doing?
Yeah, so good question. Ultimately, we have this base technology with the camera vision that we can apply in different ways. And the way that we have decided to go about it first is to address this pain point for most gyms, which is a consistent, objective, and reliable onboarding process for gym members. Now, from what we've seen and spoken to and read about, we see that roughly 20% only of new gym members get an onboarding process. And we obviously don't know the quality and what that consists of with everybody. But ultimately, we have lots of people walking around gyms not really having a direction or clarity or a sense of purpose. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide something that helps a gym standardize their onboarding process. It's a 10-minute experience where ultimately the user stands in front of this screen, inputs information about themselves through a questionnaire. We take them through a very quick movement screen consisting of 4 exercises. We do some performance tests. We do a vertical jump and the 2-minute jumping jack test for some aerobic capacity. And then based on that information, we are able to prescribe a workout program for them that takes into consideration their movement limitations. And we adjust exercise difficulty to suit what they're able to do. And we also prescribe them with exercises to help improve any potential limitations.
Yes.
So yeah, it's finally, I would say we also help with a prescription or recommendation, I would say, in regards to if there are specialist trainers in the facility that can help with those potential limitations or goals. And if there are any classes or services that we think are suitable or helpful for that individual.
Yeah, that's very cool, the personalization, right? And so what are you doing with the technology here, to the extent you can share it? What is this technology based on?
So it is based on pretty bog standard hardware with a 3D camera, the PC, the screen. But what isn't bog standard is obviously the software that we've created around it. We base ourselves off the standard SDKs delivered by the 3D camera provider, but we have spent a lot of time enhancing that. That's kind of been the main kind of goal of the team over the years, is how do we make this even better and more accurate, allow us to see from more angles or a wider depth, and be able to get better estimations. So that would be the first thing, gathering better data. And then what do we do with it? How do we prescribe feedback in real time through intuitive, sophisticated ways? This becomes obviously a user interface battle that we're constantly fighting and improving. But we want to make it easy for people to understand feedback so they can adjust immediately and have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks for that overview. I know now we're going to have some basic Q&A from some of our audience. And thank you all. Please put in your questions This is always the best part. We've given you kind of an overview. And again, as I mentioned, we try not to have these run too long, but we'll be here to help you out with any of your questions. And we have a great series of questions from Benjamin Lee. Benjamin, thank you for your questions. And everyone else, again, thank you for attending. So Benjamin asks, at what level is the AI recommending exercises to the user? That's his first question. Can you tell us that, Ian?
Yeah, sure. So we are asking questions initially about user goals, user training age, and also training frequency, how often they want to come to the gym. We ask questions about pain in specific areas of the body and the intensity of those pain points. And based on this information, we have selected a templated training program that we think might suit a beginner for muscle growth that's training 3 times a week, for instance. And then all exercises within this template have a host of different parameters within joint biomechanics that we feel are required to be successful in those exercises. And then we correlate a logic where what we find and what we require needs to match. So we start swapping out exercises based on what we see a biomechanical perspective a user will be able to handle.
Got it. So his second question, which you answered a little bit of it, but he says, how does it consider things like goals, which you mentioned, but in relation to limitations in spine motor control, for example?
Well, there are spine motor control is obviously a bit of a broad term. That would depend on the intricacy of that motor control. If we're just talking about small degrees of deviation in spinal flexion, for instance, we may not perceive that as that necessary to correct, or that indicates that they can't do certain basic exercises. So we are currently looking at relatively large discrepancies or inabilities to maintain posture, etc. And that's kind of what we are flagging essentially as something that needs addressing.
Right. Can you comment on the database used to train this AI?
Not in detail. This was done before I came on board with the technical team in Japan. But I know they worked for over 3 years with the University of Tokyo in creating different population comparisons and training groups and training programs. So the CTO will have to answer in more detail on that.
No, that's great. Vincenzo, thank you so much for joining us, my friend in Italy. I can't wait to see you at FIBO. Thank you for your question. So could this software be used maybe later in the future with any third cameras and standard PCs? So he's talking about in the future using other kinds of cameras, I believe.
Well, any 3D camera, I'm reading it. Yes, I mean, we are using, as I said, a pretty standard off-the-shelf 3D camera as it is. We're just applying a bit more technology to that. But we look at this in the future that as technology in mobile cameras increases, and that we will be able to apply similar levels of analysis to 2D cameras or to LiDAR sensors. So for sure, I mean, it's impossible to foresee the future of how quickly things will develop, but I think we can get this out into more hands for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question here: what standard of movement is being set to be considered good, considering the variability in human? His word, you can read that. You know better than I. So is it 10 degree asymmetry, et cetera, examples that he cites? What do you think about that?
Benjamin, it sounds like you and I need to have some good conversations on the side. I'm sure I'll enjoy that. Ultimately, we have, with myself and other orthopedic trained individuals, been kind of assessing every exercise we have in about a 300 exercise library, looking at how much of a biomechanical deviation should we allow. And we are definitely not trying to kind of arrest people for not having perfect ranges of motion. We're looking at essentially just safeguarding those that have major limitations, giving them a regression of exercise selection. But we have a standard from a 1, 2, and a 3, and that we score them based on those biomechanical ranges of motion. So we've gone through, just a team of us have gone through each exercise and decided, and it was tedious, each joint in each exercise, along with the forces that go through each joint. It's been a process.
Yeah, that's the hard work, when you got to figure out how to take an idea and make it pragmatic in its application, right? There's a lot of decisions you have to make on what is within certain boundaries, right?
Absolutely. Luckily, I enjoy that geeking out. So Benjamin, we'll have to connect.
Yeah. Well, listen. Thank you all for your questions. As I mentioned, we are going to be at FIBO, both Ian and I. Bryan K. O'Rourke at Gmail, at Bryan K. O'Rourke. I know Ian, you could reach out to Ian via LinkedIn, or go see him and the group at Shosabi at Hall 7. It's a very interesting technology. I highly recommend those that are curious about personal training and AI tools to go and check it out, because it's certainly worth checking out. I know Ian is very good at explaining and demonstrating the tech. So we look forward to seeing everyone in Cologne. And as I promised, we do these in around 30 minutes. So we appreciate the questions and appreciate all of you attending. And until next time, we'll have some great follow-on webinars in the week ahead about a lot of other subjects. So thanks again for being part of the webinar.
Thank you.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.